Welcome to episode 2 of Printing Pressed. I've written a book and I wanted to get it published. So what do we do now? We want to find a literary agent. A query letter, or query, is a professional solicitation to a literary agent to try to get their services. I know most people pronounce it query, but that sounds vaguely offensive. So I'm going to go with query, which is another acceptable pronunciation. It's not like you pronounce querulous, querulous, but English is weird. I get it. In this episode, we're going to talk about why query letters are so important, provide some examples, and then write our own. Before we get into the details of query letters, I thought it was time for an emotional check-in. How am I feeling? What is this process like? I have a much better sense of what needs to happen, what I need to do, but it's still overwhelming. I have to find and sort through different agents. I have to do some research on their projects, who they represent. I have to hope that they're even interested in my project. And then I have to pitch it to the best of my ability. That's a lot. And it's okay to feel like I might have too much on my plate. I can take my time and I can do it piece by piece. I would say I'm in a state of cautious optimism. The road forward is clear, but the conditions are a little uncertain. One more brief tangent. I feel like I should share a bit about myself every episode. There's a spider that's been living in my shower since March. I've named her Sheila. Also, I'm an avid cyclist. Think less spandex and more, I like to get places and don't own a car. Now back to getting published. Before you send a query letter, you should finish your book. That's an important step. Courtney Mom has some recommendations on that. If you are 100% happy with your manuscript, it's probably a sign it's bad. Pulitzer finalist Rebecca Mecca. I wouldn't send it out until you get the feeling that it's finally done for the third time. I think I'm there. If thinking about your project makes you queasy, because you know deep down inside that you've done everything you can to make it shine, then you might be ready to send your manuscript to agents. Courtney Mom. During this agent solicitation process, Courtney Mom recommends that you aim high. Go for your dream agent. Be realistic and have some backup plans, but you might as well go for the agent that represents your favorite author. Pull strings. If you have any connections, leverage them. If you know an agent, or if you know an author who will recommend you to an agent, use that resource. Be confident, but humble. Avoid phrases like, "This book will change your life," or "save mankind" in your query letter. So what is a query letter? It's a formal solicitation to an agent to try to enlist their services in representing you. They have a more direct route to publishing houses, editors, and are able to push in ways that an individual is discouraged from. Essentially, they have professional clout. And as a first-time author, I want someone in my corner fighting for me, willing to negotiate tough contracts, find the right home for my novel, and ideally start a bidding war. So what are some examples of effective query letters? This review is from Kristen Nelson on Pub Rants. The highlighted parts are Kristen's thoughts, and the rest is Lisa's query letter. Dear Miss Nelson, hooray, she got my name right. So right off the bat, we get the sense that you want to personalize this letter, and you want to personalize it correctly. You're making a horrible first impression if you can't even get the agent's name right. I read on Publishers Marketplace that you're interested in female-oriented fantasy. I think that Thief of Souls, the first novel in my fantasy detective series, might interest you. Kristen's response is short and sweet, but shows she did at least a little bit of research about me and what I'm looking for. I think this is wonderful advice to follow. Pick an agent that suits your needs. Find out something about them and mention that. Personalize it. Don't just send out a form letter. What if you suddenly have a largely unknown, potentially unlimited power? What if that power just might eat your soul for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? What if every magical mobster and sicko sorcerer in town wants that power? And what if you can't get rid of it? Pretty dramatic. I like the hooks of this. Kristen's response, normally I'm not a big fan of what I call the what if question starting the query, but let me tell you what got me into this letter. I just love the tone. The power might eat my soul for breakfast? Mobster sicko? Those are fun terms to be kicking around for a fantasy novel. I perked up immediately. This is a wonderful example of a query letter capturing the tone and voice of the author. And you can see how compelling it is to a potential literary agent. That's Rain Benares' problem. She's a seeker, a finder of things lost and people missing. Most of what she's hired to find doesn't get lost by itself. It has help. Dependable help. I'm so tickled. I love the phrase, most of what she's hired to find doesn't get lost by itself. Perfect fun tone. I know this is an epic fantasy. It has an urban, lighter feel, yet I'm getting all the necessary information about the main character and the role she is going to play in the story. I think Lisa's done a great job of getting our attention and now telling us more about who this character is, what this world is like. Kristen responds, Here's the conflict, and I love how she sums up the people who are looking for it as a way of clarifying the problem of being in possession of this amulet and how the plot will unfold. It's clear you want to provide succinct details about your story. You don't want to be too vague. She likes attention as much as the next girl, but this is the kind she can do without. I know I'm getting a modern voice with this fantasy blend. It's subtle and well done. Once again, be true to yourself. Don't try to write what you think someone wants to hear. Express who you are and why you want to share this story with the world. The next paragraph goes into greater detail about the story. I'm just going to skip past that. Thief of Souls is my first novel. Done. There's no lamenting that she's never been published. She has no other credentials to offer, so she doesn't. I love the query so far, so I really don't mind the lack here. I'm an editor at an advertising agency with prior experience in corporate communications and marketing. Kristen's response, a little tidbit about her that personalizes a little, but since it doesn't really relate to her novel, she keeps it brief, and that's fine. I learned a lot from this part. I'm a first-time author. I don't have any cosigns. I didn't go through an MFA program, so I should keep this part brief. I'd be glad to send you my complete manuscript for your review. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Professional wrap-up. I want to see 30 pages without having to think too hard about it. I'm sold on her tone that I know will be mirrored in her writing. This novel was released in 2007 and was renamed Magic Lost, Trouble Found. Congratulations, Lisa, and Kristen, thank you for the detailed analysis. I'm not going to read through the rest of the query letters, but I'm going to provide them as an example. You can pause if you'd like to read through the whole thing. One thing to note, you want to include your word count. That's important. What I like most about this first paragraph is Lynn mentions that the sequel is nearing completion, and another freestanding book with the same characters is in outline form. I think that helps your pitch, especially in light of some of the delays that George R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss have had with their series. If something's done, I think publishers are going to jump on it a lot quicker. I love thieves and spies, those sneaky people who live by intuition, skill, and inside knowledge. In fantasy, however, they are often portrayed as dark, ruthless characters or relegated to second-string roles, as useful or amusing foils for more conventional heroic types. Luck in the Shadows gives the rogues center stage. Hey, you already got me, Lynn. I love toying with tropes, I love subverting expectations, and Luck in the Shadows seems like it's going to be doing all of those. Lynn then gets into the specifics of the story, introducing the primary characters, and then wraps it up nicely by talking about their experience and publication history. Courtney Schaefer starts her query letter by again mentioning the word count, and then notes that adding a specific detail about why they're reaching out to that specific agent is pretty important. Skipping to the end, Courtney then writes, although The Whitefire Crossing is my first novel, I have over 10 years of experience with technical writing in my job in the aerospace industry. In addition, my many years of mountaineering, rock climbing, and backpacking in the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada have helped me bring Dev and his beloved Whitefire Mountains to life. If you look above and pay attention to the title, crossing a mountain range is an important part of the story. I really like that Courtney connects her own personal experiences with rock climbing to this. And if I was an agent, I would have more faith that she could capture the key details to really sell the story and make it feel true. Now on to writing a query letter. Here's what I came up with. Dear, obviously I'll fill that in later, I am seeking representation for my dark fantasy novel, The Witch's Weave, complete at 175,000 words. It took a long time. It has the ability to stand alone, yet is intended as part of a trilogy. I might add in a bit about having an outline for the second book. I'm not sure if that's relevant yet. The cinematic nature of the action sequences and the colorful cast would lend itself to adaptation into a visual medium. Taking some of the lessons from the examples, I wanted to show what the vision for the project was. And since an agent gets 15% of whatever I earn, having it spin off into a movie, a TV show, something animated, any of that would be great for that agent. 4 protagonists struggle across 2 disparate worlds. One is Galalan, a gritty fantasy setting based on the Norman conquest of Ireland, where ancient factions stand on the brink of war and magic is real. The other is our own, with the twist that 4 people are role-playing the fantasy characters in a game of Dungeons and Dragons run by an antagonist. This book explores themes of trying to find your place in the world and the struggle to leave it a better place, both in reality and through escapism. Is forging peace between brutal colonizers, terrifying monsters, and indigenous groups any less harrowing than navigating the institutional problems of Hollywood, our sociopolitical climate, and the ruthlessness of dating in your 30s? The character arcs are deeply personal. I held up a mirror to my own life and to composites of those close to me to infuse realism, exploring how small decisions can have drastic consequences. It was a challenge to succinctly describe my book. I have a lot of important characters. There's 9 primary POVs. I could have spent multiple paragraphs detailing their names, their experiences, their stories, but the advice is you keep your query letter between 300 and 400 words, and I thought that would only distract and bog down from the pitch. Maybe this is a mistake, but I feel good about this. I think I articulated the point of my story, and hopefully it was engaging. Let me know in the comments below. The POV-based structure of this story invokes the complexity of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones to the layman, while dividing the narrative between 2 worlds calls to mind Haruki Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World. Initially, the chapters unfold like a reverse matryoshka. Instead of spending long passages slowly introducing the cast, the reader is quickly shown who these people are and why you should care about them. The chapters then progressively grow in length, weaving together interconnected journeys and fostering dramatic cliffhangers. Now we've gotten into the nuts and bolts a bit more. I provided some comps. Unfortunately, both of my comps are a bit dated. And for fantasy, George R.R. Martin is a pretty poor choice. I know everyone is clamoring to compare themselves to him, and he's such a model for modern fantasy, but in this case, it really does match the tone and structure. The series by Robin Hobb, Live Ship Traders, is also supposed to mirror that kind of structure, but I haven't read it yet, and I'm not going to lie about that. Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson is another example, shout out to Anomander Rake, but I don't think the tone compares as well as A Song of Ice and Fire. Hard-Boiled Wonderland I think is a bit of a deeper cut, and I wish it came out more recently, but the parallel structure of it very heavily influenced me. Murakami also heavily influenced me with his prose. Murakami, if you want to be a little more authentic. I hate changing mid-sentence to another language. It feels a bit pretentious and like code switching. I don't order a croissant, I order a croissant. I wrap up my query letter by writing, The Witch's Weave is my first novel. I work as a freelance sound designer in film, art, and various media, telling stories through audio as opposed to words. This passage was obviously heavily influenced by one of the earlier query examples. I also just noticed a fly is buzzing around. If you're seeing that and it's distracting, sorry. I wanted to be honest about my publication history, but also point out that my career does involve storytelling. Some of those lessons are applicable, especially evoking emotions for characters and reinforcing plot arcs. I then wrap up with thank you for your time and consideration. I think that's a perfectly professional sign-off. I don't feel the need to add a sincerely, a best, definitely not a regards, never regards. And there you have it. We've gone through what a query letter is, given some examples, and I've written my own. Now I have to send it off facing rejection and heartache? Oh man, who do I send it to? How do I find them? How do I remember who I already sent something to? Find out next time.